Hello everyone and welcome. You're here with me, Jen the Taxidermy Witch, and it is true, we are almost halfway through this book, Backwoods Witchcraft, that we've been reading for, I don't know, a week or two now. We're reading it chapter by chapter, kind of like an audiobook with commentary from myself and from you guys. So let's say hello to a couple people that are here, and then as this is one of the audiobooks, we're just going to dive right in, get the book done, and then we'll talk and have some discussion after that. This chapter's not super long. I think we counted, what, 9 pages, something like that. So we'll say hello to Tattooed Hearts. Welcome. My day's great. Thank you for asking. Ricky Bunce is here. Hey, Ricky, thank you for your Patreon. I really appreciate it. I really appreciate it. And now we have 9 people on the Patreon, which I put in the description below. It's not just a donation of money. You actually get things in return, so make sure to check that out, you guys. They're all really fun taxidermy themes, so spent a lot of time on that. And my Etsy shop's in there too, as I do like custom pinup oracle decks and all kinds of oracle decks, whatever you could think of. But I'm just finishing up a couple Betty Page and pinup decks, so my Etsy shop's down below too. You can buy so many things from me. Herbs, taxidermy, whatever, chicken's feet. Jackie's here. Hi, honey. How are you? So good to see you. Purple Sky Witchcraft is here. Another patron. Thank you for being here. Sherrybug D. Raven Song. Hello, everybody. So good to see you. Uncle Badger! Another patron. You guys are fantastic. Lunchbox. So good to see you. All right, you guys, let's start the reading. There's 11 people here, and we are about 2 minutes in. Silver Willow, hello. Welcome. Nice to see you. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to get us sat down right here. I do have some adjustments to make with the camera. And then I'm going to ask you guys a lighting question. And you'll tell me which is better, with or without the light on. Do you think this looks good with the natural sunlight coming through? Or is it better for us to have that? What do you think? Lamp or sunlight? Natural? Yeah, I thought so too. So I'm just going to burn some sage just to give my little area a cleanse here, and after that we'll start reading. So this chapter is on omens. Yesterday we read chapter 4. It was quite short. There you go. There's a little cleanse for y'all. I had a lot of hands touch this in the last couple of days because people were looking at it, so. You okay, kitties? Alright, so I did have a comment from somebody just like half an hour ago, and I wanted to mention their comment. The comment is from Moondance Iris, and this is her quote in her comment. She says, the author left out Southern Ohio as the 6th state that the Appalachian Mountains touch. So, thank you, Moondance Iris, for letting us know that Southern Ohio, that the Appalachian Mountains touch that as well. That's great information for us, and we're happy to have you contribute that. So we'll make sure to note that in our Book of Shadows, Ricky. Ricky, thank you for taking on the project of doing Book of Shadows. I have a couple of ideas for us to start from the beginning and then also keep up to where we are now. So we'll get there, though. And who knows, maybe that'll be my first book, is the YouTube Book of Shadows. Alright, so chapter 5 is called From the East, From the West, and it is Living by Signs and Omens. Hey Alex, can you give me a glass of water before you go?
Yeah, sure.
Thanks. Here we are. It was the wild medicine, the health of the crops in the field, and the wisdom handed down from generations that decided the survival of the property of the Little Mountain communities. An early frost, a bad blight, I don't know what blight is, somebody look up that word, B-L-I-G-H-T, or planting during the wrong sign could endanger the entire harvest. So certain measures were devised to prevent misfortunes from this type. B-L-I-G-H-T, blight. Hello, Michelle Knoll. Omens and lore surrounded the act of planting.
I think blight's a fungus, Jen.
What, babe?
I think blight's a fungus, but I'm not sure.
Alex thinks blight might be a fungus. Oh, that's where all the plants die with the white powdery stuff, Ricky says. Yeah, so between what you and Ricky said, it sounds like a fungus. Okay, blight. Oh yeah, so omens and lore surrounded the act of planting, growing, caretaking, and harvesting mainly for the purpose of health and life. The major belief in omens and signs comes from the Bible. Elastitates 3...
It's a plant disease caused by fungi and mildews.
Thank you, Alex. Blight is a plant disease caused by fungus and mildews. So there's a section of the Bible that I can't pronounce. It's called Eclastites, and it's 3:1-2. And it says something like, "Let there be lights in the filaments of the heavens to divide the day from the night. And let them be signs and for seasons and for days and years." Sorry, I thought my husband had left when I started the video, but he came back because he forgot something. So I apologize for all the interruptions. This led old folks to believe that just about everything had its appointed time, whether it was certain moon phases to cut your hair, or even the best day to get married. And that's interesting to look into, the moon phases to cut your hair. I've heard of that before. Interesting stuff. So, moon phase to cut your hair, even the best day to get married. One mistake could result in death, with the case of an old saying, "If a row of corn is unknowingly left unplanted, death will visit the family before harvest." To prevent this, the last row must be planted before the other rows sprout from the ground, or before the first sunset after finding the unplanted row. So there's a lot to that, you know. Things were done based on what sign of the moon was in, and each sign was associated with a body part, its government over a man's affairs. That's very interesting. So the first kind of section of the book says, setting out. Follow these guidelines when you go to set out the seed or go hunting. So here are some guidelines for that. Plant peas and other crops that produce multiples when the signs are in the arms or Gemini. So Gemini is the arms, apparently, and I didn't know that. However, never plant green beans at this time of day, or at this time, as they will bloom themselves to death and won't bear anything worthwhile. Now that would be helpful if you were just there for the flowers themselves, right? Because when flowers are white and yellow, we remember that that those two colors ward off evil, like having a tomato plant by the door. The white and yellow of the flower helps ward off evil. So if you were growing something just to have those flowers there, that would be a good idea. There's a little notation of mine. I think you forgot my water. Always plant corn when the sign is in Leo, which is associated with the heart. So great notes. Gemini is the body part is arms. Leo, the body part is the heart. Under Leo, it will grow tall and be less prone to blight or bugs. And remember, blight is that kind of mold or mildew. Yeah, you guys, folk magic, you know, I'm reading some comments that Sherry Bug D was talking about, because I haven't been reading comments, because I've been reading. That's why I need my mods to help me and let people know, but thank you. It does use the Bible, and it's folk magic, so it's, it's kind of like hoodoo in that sense. There's a lot of, the Bible shows up a lot in hoodoo, but that's kind of for different reasons. Hoodoo practitioners, as we talked about before, they were using the Bible because they were forced to, they were forced into the Christian religion when they came over, not only forced to be slaves, but forced into that religion. And so they hid their workings and their religion within the Bible. So when they were praying to St. Peter, really that was Papa Legba, and so on. And so they just kind of made it work for them. However, it's just an interesting kind of, it's a very good conversating point, and I hope nobody gets angry when they're talking about that. But here in this room, we're eclectic. So please accept everybody's opinions. And again, I'm not really reading too much in the chat, but I'd just like to say. Hello, Dragular. Welcome, welcome. We are a good community of pagans and witches. You're absolutely right. All right, I'm going to get back to the book. I'm not really supposed to talk when I'm reading because we'll talk after the chapter's over. So here's some other good information. The heart and chest is when the sign is in Cancer. Or Cancer, the heart and chest, is the best sign for fast germination. So plant during Cancer, and the body part is the heart and chest. Plant flowers in the sign of the posy girl, Virgo. So Virgo's the posy girl, as this causes plants to flower a lot but bear little fruit. Virgo is the worst sign to plant food under, especially since it's associated with the bowels, so the lowest intestine. Hunt deer when the sign is in Virgo because they will be slow to scare. And never hunt under the sign of the legs, Aquarius. So Aquarius is the legs. Or the thighs, Sagittarius. So Sagittarius is the thighs. All right, you guys? We need to have this in the Book of Shadows. Cut flowers when the sign is in the head, or Aries. So the head is Aries. To keep the blooms from wilting too fast. So that's when you should go out and cut your bouquets and such. This is a good time to catch fish as well, when the sign is in Aries or the head. Fish won't bite at all when under the sign of Pisces, the feet. So Pisces is the sign of the feet. Like we were saying, all of these different signs have different body parts attached to them. This is really the first time I think I'm ever really hearing that and putting it all together. So, well, and that freaking makes sense. Fish won't bite at all in the sign of Pisces. I wonder why. Pisces is the shape of a fish. So that one's quite easy to remember, yeah? When it comes to textiles, follow these guidelines. Oh, kind of like a feng shui, kind of good energy balance, maybe. Get wool that has been freshly sheared from the sheep or goat when the moon is in the head of Aries. Hilarious. I have goats. I can do that. And they have this gorgeous wool undercoat. I have some in the other room, and I use it in poppet workings. I use it in all kinds of things. So that needs to be in the BOS, Ricky. Get wool that has been freshly sheared from sheep or goat when the moon is in the head or Aries. Next, wash the fiber when it is in the chest, Cancer. So when we're talking about washing this wool, wash the fiber when it is in the chest, or Cancer. Card the wool into roving and dye when it is in the sign of the legs, or Aquarius, for the best results. Card, C-A-R-D, card the wool. You have white buffalo fur, Michelle? I would love to do a trade for some of that. Absolutely. Let's get some info from you. How much do you have? Maybe I could buy some. We'll do a trade to get, a good amount. Wow. I just love buffaloes. I love them. When I spent time in Wyoming, and, Never Ending Story and all of that. For those of you who watch Stranger Things, wasn't that so cool that they sang the Never Ending Story theme song? Oh my gosh. All right, sorry, I'm getting off track. Ailments of a body part where also more vulnerable or easy hurt during its own sign. For example, so I'm going to say that again because it's not making sense to me. Ailments of a body part. So ailments are like dis-ease, right? Ailments of a body part where also, I think it's supposed to say we're also more vulnerable. But it says where. So let's just say we're also more vulnerable or easily hurt during its own sign. For example, and that makes sense. So if you hurt your head and it was in, what did we just learn the head was? Aquarius? No, legs are Aquarius. If you hurt your leg and it was in, you were currently in the sign of Aquarius, this makes sense. It's more vulnerable or easily hurt during its own sign. Or if you hit your head and it was in the sign of Aries, you know, or you got a concussion in the sign of Aries, it was more vulnerable. Now, I'm going to read their examples and we'll see if I'm giving you guys good ones. I have to say this because I haven't said it yet. I'm not a doctor. I was a massage therapist for 10 years. I'm no longer licensed anymore. That's it. And we read loads of books together, right? All kinds of books. So here are their examples. If you're more apt to get a sore throat when the moon is in the sign of the neck or Taurus. Oh, excuse me. Yeah, you're more apt to get a sore throat when the moon is in the sign of the neck or Taurus. The knees ache most when the sign is Capricorn. So for those of you who have sore throats or knee aches, please let me know if this is true for you. And it might take you a month to tell me for him to get through all the signs for you to note it down. But this might be really interesting, like a little pain journal, like a little pain book of shadows with the moon cycles. Where's your pain at? What intensity level it's at? I'm a young person. I'm 37 years old. I've worked hard all my life. I've had 1 to 2 to sometimes 3 jobs at a time my whole life. And my body is tired and it hurts. You know, I have kind of arthritis in my hands. When I was doing massage, they would get stuck in positions and just lock there. I would wake up in the middle of the night and I would just crazy. And I was doing yoga, I was stretching, I was drinking water, I was eating raw foods, and it's still doing that. My body was still in pain. Of course, it lessened when I ate better. But I really do think that that would be a really interesting, fun thing to do, would be some sort of like just a little diary or a calendar that noted your pain if you had lots of pain. Because, see, I have neck pain, back pain, shoulder pain, endometriosis pain. Sometimes I have really sharp stomach pains, stuff like this, right? So I just wanted to say, hi Amethyst Moonstone. I just wanted to say that I'm probably going to start doing that. That's a goal of mine, is to start one of these pain journals and look at where that day and what section or sign the moon is in. You know, is my lower back pain happening in the back sign? Is my headache coming in the sign of Aries, the head? So this is fantastic. It's brand new information for me. I'm excited about it. Some other of their examples are kidney stones are hardest to pass when the sign is in Libra, the rains. Oh, yeah, right? And the rains look like the ureters coming down into the kidneys and, you know, then down to the urethra. I totally get the rains being the urinary. Yeah? Interesting stuff. So Libra, the rains, kidney stones, and ureter, urethra tract. That's the connection there, Ricky. Hey, Ricky, you're so fine. Now I have to change the song. It's not that song, it's a different song. It's a song called I'm Excited. Alright, finally, one more piece of advice for good measure. Never tell secrets or have flirtatious affairs during the sign of Scorpio. Or your secrets may well be exposed. Okay? We also pay attention to the direction of the wind and its effects, and it blows from as it blows from a particular direction. If you sow seeds, S-O-W, it means if you plant seeds. If you sow seeds while the wind is blowing from the north or northeast, they won't sprout at all. And if they do, they will be more vulnerable to being fried by the sun. If you sow seeds when the wind is at the east, bugs will destroy the yield. So what you bring in. Wind from the west or south ensures good growth. There are a few sayings about east winds in the mountains. To help you remember, wind in the east isn't good for man or beast. There we go, Book of Shadows. Wind in the east isn't good for man or beast. In regards to fishing, wind in the east, the fish will bite least. Wind in the east, the fish will bite least. You know what would be hilarious? If me and Tangerine Layla or somebody got together and we made a witchcraft album with little sayings that you could remember, and it would be like this. You know how, like, you can easily hear a song 20 times and then you remember it, and you can start singing it, and the more you sing it, the more you know the words? Why not put some of these good things to remember, these folk magic type things to remember, into songs so that they're literally programmed into our head? I love it! So Tangerine Layla, if you want to get together and make some sort of album, I know you're in Canada, but remember, Jim Morrison recorded the whole entire album of LA Woman over the phone from Paris while the other guys were in the studio, and it sounds epic. So we could do it. Somehow we could do it. But we can put some of these things together and sing them, make them into some kind of album so that we can all remember them easier. What do you think? What do you think? What do you think, Thomas? All right, so next we are going to be at what part of this? Right, quotes. Wind from the east isn't good for man or beast. In regards to fishing, wind in the east, the fish will bite the least. All right. Wind in the west, the fish bite best. Wind in the west, the fish bite best. I know, my voice isn't for everyone. And wind in the south, the fish bite with the mouth. Instead of the tail. Wind in the south, the fish bite with the mouth. Alright, the last phrase means the fish will bite on the hook instead of just the bait. Okay, that's hilarious that I asked that question and then it was immediately answered. Obviously, the author is fantastic. And he knows what questions will come out of what things that he writes. I love it. Thank you, Jake Richards. This book is fantastic. I'm so happy to read your art words. They're very beautiful. This part of Appalacian lore is odd because the east is usually a favored direction for good things in many aspects, but I do remember my Pawpaw John's sunflower struggling after he sowed the seeds when the wind was out of the east. They were eaten up with ants and little white mites. Oh no, not lions, tigers, bears, and little white mites. When the seeds were taken out and examined, there were holes plumb through them all, so that went all the way through. They turned into little hag seeds. Far too many, there are many, many more examples of beliefs like this. Far too many to place in this chapter of the book. Well, Jake Richards, maybe you could make a little book of all of the rest of them. That way, I could make an album, and everyone will remember them for always, you know. What do you think? What do you think? Far too many to place in the chapter of this book, but there's a starting place for you. For you should decide to take up the seed by the moon and head out to the garden. I love it. Thank you, Jake. Both of my grandmothers had huge gardens, complete with tomatoes, squash, corn, green beans, sunflowers, and cabbage. They were well versed by the signs and the wisdom their mamas taught them. These gardens, along with the meat brought home from hunting and fishing, often constituted half or more of their food, even when the grocery stores were around the corner. Wait, what? I'm going to read that sentence again because it didn't fully make sense to me. They were well versed by the signs and weather wisdom their mamas taught them. These gardens, along with the meat brought home from hunting and fishing, often constituted half or more of their food, even with grocery stores around the corner. I get it. I think in that sentence they're saying even with the food was so easily accessible, it was right around the corner, they were able to hunt and grow half of their food. And that sounds a lot like my folks when I was growing up, right, Mom? Peggy, you watch this. It does, because, like, I know, Mom, you couldn't make bread, you know, you did try, but it wasn't one of the things you were good at. But, like, honestly, we got so much that we canned, that we didn't hunt per se, when we were on the farm when I was a girl. We did a lot of fishing, yeah, but we canned as many vegetables as and fruits and all that as we could for the winter. We grew so many vegetables in our garden. That sufficed us, like, really 9 months out of the year. I think in the dead of winter we would buy vegetables, you know. But we would have our own cows. We had cows that were pets, and then we had cows that were food. And you had different relationships with the two of them. Otherwise, it was terribly heartbreaking. But yeah, I remember watching my mom pull out baby cows when I was a kid in the middle of the night. We'd all go down to the barn because so-and-so was about to have their baby. And I do, in this lifetime, want to get back to doing that, that sort of stuff. So that's kind of with the direction you all know I'd like to go, but just stating it for those people here who are newer to the channel. Welcome, all of you, everyone. Okay. So I'm going to continue here with the reading. He's obviously forgotten my glass of water, so I need to go grab a glass of water. I'll be right back. Oh, what the whistle? Who are we talking about that doesn't have an actual channel, Thomas? Yeah, I'm going to show Jake Richards again in case you don't remember seeing him. And so he states in the earlier chapters of the book that he has both hoodoo roots, and he has hoodoo ancestors in his bloodline, and Native American ancestors from the Trails of Tears. So that's the source of which we're reading. Okay, so white mites, I think, was some of the last stuff we said, was talking about when the seeds were taken. No, we did that. Fey seeds. Both my grandmothers had huge... Yep, that's where we left off, because I was talking about our garden. And they were able to grow or hunt half of their food, even though the store was around the corner. It was cheaper to pay the hunting license fee, which here right now a hunting license fee I think is like $100 a year, but you have to get one for each animal, blah 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 blah. Still, if you pay $100 for a deer tag and you're able to get, I don't even know because I don't hunt, but like 3 deer that year, that meat will feed your family for that whole year if you have a family of like 4 or 5. You know what I'm saying? Yeah, it will get boring, but it's not about that. You know what I mean? And what's more organic than going out there and getting deer and eating that, you know, rather than food that's been out in a I know that there are a lot of people here who are vegans and care about that kind of thing. But, I love owning taxidermy that my family has hunted and eaten from, and then now, and that went into my ancestry. Like, that animal became a part of my ancestry. And now she's here with me. That's F you guys. And so that's something that my family hunted and ate, and now I work with the spirit of that animal, and very, very close. So there's something special about it, and I'm not promoting eating tons of meat, but I am promoting a lifestyle that is just so like the way that it used to be, and the way that I like mine to be, and the way that I think the future will have to resort back to, eventually. It was cheaper to pay the hunting license and fee and plant your own seeds. And faith and prayer are always free. There are always a large storage of canned goods containing everything from the garden. Many of the jars held dates showing when they were canned, always with a thin layer of dust on the lids from the shed that they were stored in. Plants and animals have long sustained the body of the mountaineer of Appalachia, from filling bellies to healing wounds. A plethora of books have been written on the medicinal uses of native and exotic herbs, but nothing has been compiled regarding the superstitious doings held behind the herbs and their care. Really, Jake? There's time for everything in the world, in the word. What? There's a time for everything by the word. There's a time to plant, there's a time to work, there's a time to dig wells. It's all in the Bible. That's a quote from his Nana, as my Nana explained. And from what I've seen, this holds true. Plants and crops that bear their fruit above ground are always planted in the change of the moon. Now, I think it's interesting they're working with the Bible and the moon cycles. I don't know a lot of Christians that work like that, you know what I'm saying? A lot of Christians that I've met hear me talking about working with the moon cycles in my garden or outside of my garden or whatever, and they immediately start asking questions about Wicca, which they assume is devil worship. So I think it's really interesting because I know and I feel that some of you are being thrown off because he's talking about the Bible so much. I'm not saying all of you, I'm just saying some of you. But just remember that it's cool because they're using the Bible and they're using the moons, and I just think that that's fantastic. Here we go. I lost my place, I apologize. So plants and crops that bear their fruit above ground are always planted in the change of the moon, when the moon is moving from new to full. So that is called the waxing phase. When the moon is moving from new to full, root crops are such as carrots, ginger, and potatoes are planted when the moon is changing from full to new. So that would be the waning then. Oh, and it says right here, and this is the waning phase. If root crops are planted when the moon is waxing, they'll simply vine themselves all over the crops and will either be very small or they won't come at all. Same with the above ground crops. If they're planted in the waning of the moon, there won't be much growth aside from the deep, useless roots they'll put down into the earth. When planting crops, herbs, or flowers, my family always faces the east, because that's where Christ is believed to be coming from, right, and is the bread of life, in quotations, symbolizing that all good comes from that auspicious direction. Facing east, we make a hole with a stick into the soil. As we're placing the seeds into the holes, we sing a planting tune. I'll sing it for you. This song is by Jake Richards, or his nan. I don't know. Some of the birds in that... Wait. Some for the birds and some for I. Some for the birds and some for I. Some for the beetle and some for the fly. Some to rot, some to grow. Lord bless these seeds, I now do sow. That's the song. I'll say it though. Some for the birds and some for I, some for the beetle and some for the fly, some to rot and some to grow. Lord bless these seeds, I now do sow. I imagine the symbolism of the bird, the beetle, the fly is calling for good germination and pollination for another generation of the seed for harvest. It was also to offer a bit of the bounty to these called up in the rhyme in order to keep away thievery on the part of the bird, beetle, and fly by offering them their due up front. Another little, yeah, you guys, let's talk about this super quick. You can make offerings to the bugs and animals that are messing up your plants in your garden, okay? So if you have a spit bug or you have caterpillars or some kind of pest that's eating whatever's in your garden, why not? Why not go out there, light a candle, be with the candle until it burns out or whatever. Just a little tea light. Light a candle and leave out a little nature offering that is like organic and biodegradable. Here's one I make, and I sell it on my channel, or my Etsy shop, which is down in the description. Leave that with a candle and sit there and just talk and be like, hey little beetles, I leave this out to you. I really, really, really need you to stop messing with my plants. And I offer you this beautiful positive energy and I hope you enjoy. Meanwhile, inside the offering, there's things the beetle would probably be okay with, like mugwort, you know, that I harvested that maybe they were eating from my garden. They weren't, but I'm just saying. Why couldn't you do things like this? This sounds like stuff we do all the time. If somebody's upset with you, you could do the same thing. You can do a little working with a little offering, go outside and pray, or send the energy that they're not upset at you anymore, or that they offer you forgiveness, or for whatever. And so that's just a little idea of mine, is that, apologies, is that possibly you could just go give the pest an offering and a candle and positive energy. What do you guys think? Alright, I'm really sorry that I got you sobbing for no reason, Michelle No Creation. She says, I have the bloodline, so it really got me sobbing. I thought I was just crying for no reason, but I was transmuting the energy of the land. That's awesome, Michelle. Thank you for sharing that. I really do appreciate you sharing that. Oh, Ricky, you make apple butter? You must send me one. That's one of my favorite things, and my nan doesn't make it anymore. Oh, not me. Okay. Alright, so the next, we're on in the chapter, and I just wanted to talk about that offering, you know, because why not? Why don't we do that? I thought she was talking about the Native American bloodline. Another little rhyme that we were taught was done while planting watermelons, radishes, carrots, and more. Here is the little rhyme. I'll say it and then I'll sing it. As long as my arm, as thick as my leg, as round as my ass, and as big as my head. Great, now we get to sing that. What did I sign up for? As long as my arm, as thick as my leg, as round as my ass, as big as my head. We were telling the crops to be big and bountiful by comparing the version of its fruit to our limbs and body parts. This was somewhat common back in the day, but has decreased in its use along with the practice of following the signs of the moon moves through. Now the next section is called Growing Charms, and I'm quite excited about this section. Alright. Growing charms. Different techniques were utilized to protect the crops from dis-ease, pests, witches, frost, drought, and other threats. To prevent crops from being killed by the blight Remember, that is like a fungus, a mildewy fungus. A small tile is placed at each corner of the garden, no, each quarter of the field, plus one in the center, symbolizing the 5 wounds of Christ. To bring rain during a drought, farmers used to kill a black snake and hang it on a fence or tree limb belly up. Rain was said to arrive within 3 days from then. This charm, and I'm just going to tell you what that sounds like. Actually, I'm going to take questions. What does that sound like, you guys? What is that little practice? I'll reread it. To bring rain, this is what the folks would practice. To bring rain during a drought, farmers used to kill a black snake and hang it over on a fence or tree limb belly up. Rain was said to arrive within 3 days from then. Okay, what does that sound like? Yeah, Heather, this is why we should all get together. Me, you, Ricky, Sherrybug. Learn from each other, teach each other. It just sounds like a great thing. Y'all can come to Peggy's. Don't worry, Mom. They don't need a lot of accommodations. Sacrifice? Right. It sounds like a working with a sacrifice, right? To get something that you want. But it's definitely a sacrifice to get rain. Now, these are not things that I practice. These aren't things that I use in my witchcraft. But it's interesting that they're protecting their gardens from witches. You know. No, I'm going to strike that. Because this book is called Backwoods Witchcraft. But, you know what I mean? And I think when they're saying protection from witches, they're talking about other witches. You know, you're a worker. There's witches out there that could potentially ruin all your crops for the season. It is ironic, and that was what I was saying, Michelle Knoll, you know, because these guys are, yeah, it's interesting. I like it a lot. All right, let's continue reading, and I'm not going to put my foot in my mouth or anything like that. This charm is derived from Europe, although the Cherokee adopted a version of it as well. Another way to call up rain was to take a handful of pine needles and corn kernels out to the center of the field. Carry them in a white handkerchief on a Monday at noon and face the west, because that's where the storms come from according to the word of God. Recite 1 Kings 18-1. I'm not going to recite that. Or Jeremiah 10:13. Then open the bundle, but they do have it in the book, I just don't want to. Then open the bundle and let the needles and kernels sprinkle down like gentle rain. That probably looks really beautiful too, I bet. I prefer to set a good-sized rock underneath. The south is even clearer. Done 3 Sundays in a row, the rain will usually come within the last week. The last recipe is to conjure rain. It requires a cat. Okay, now I'm getting scared. Joyce says if you want it to rain, burn a bit of fern. Absolutely. I know an old wives' tale from Peggy, whose mother was from Oklahoma, which is pretty close to where all this is kind of going on. If you step on a spider, it'll rain. As a little kid, when I was scared of spiders, I would kill spiders. But I haven't killed bugs or spiders or anything like that for years and years and years. There are bad witches that don't know that they are witches. Okay, right? Like, there are people that are... That's kind of what I was saying. Like, that's sounds like... It sounds like satanic witchcraft or like a sacrificial witchcraft working of some sort, right? But they're also using the Bible. And I don't know, I'm not judging, I just think it's so interesting that from all walks of life people do workings in one way or another. And maybe just aren't acknowledging it as what it is. Or putting too much evil energy toward what we do, just because it's the word witch, which has obviously been taken out of context for so long. From the Dark Pool says, I've never heard that. Yeah, I know where it is. Isn't that awesome? Okay, I need to get back to the book and stop reading these, but it's so good to see y'all here. And see, Madam Butterfly, who's in the UK, also says, I've heard of it raining when someone steps on a spider, too. There you are. I hope it could have been from me, though. I think I've said that before, Madam Butterfly. Okay, so, the last recipe to conjure rain requires a cat. I'm going to reread this. I'm going to pre-read this real quick to make sure it's not too... there's some things I will not read on my channel. And if they're doing something with the cat, like what happened to the snake, I'm not going to read it. Oh, okay, we're good. The last recipe to conjure rain requires a cat. There's an age-old superstition that the cat is conjuring up a rainstorm when it washes its face. So when it licks its hands and does its face. Because that's the only way a cat can do it, unless another cat comes over and washes their face. And when you have a few cats, they do that for each other. It's so, so cute to see them take care of each other. When Otis was a kitten, Bazinga, he had no idea how to clean himself. He'd just take the weirdest baths, and Bazinga taught him, our oldest cat, and she would wash his face, and it was the cutest thing, and then he would wash her, and my heart would just melt, you know. But when a cat washes his own face, lick their paw, doing their face, that is said to be conjuring up a rainstorm. So I suppose if you put a little bit of wet cat food on a cat's face, maybe they could wash their face, because they wouldn't want that on there. And then that's one way that you could not harm the animal, give them a little extra treat, and just take a little time out of their day, and they would have to wash their face, and you could get a rainstorm. Does that sound like it's okay? Let's put that in the Book of Shadows if everybody agrees that's not harming a cat in any way. It is so sweet when they teach each other. Hey, Mama Hennessy, so good to see you. So good to see you. All right, we're chapter 5, Omens and Signs. Okay, so Ricky, let's put that in the Book of Shadows about the cat face cleaning. We could just put a little bit of wet cat food on their face to get them to wash their face, and that'll conjure up some rain. Okay, so what did the mountaineer do? He got it to wash its face. Usually he got a glob of bacon grease, butter, or ice cream that was smudged on a cat's nose or neck for them to wash it off. I didn't read that far, I promise you. I just read down to the part... What can I say? Okay. And somebody's gonna go, ice cream! My cat Otis loves ice cream. And, you know, since it's cold, it took me a long time to get him to taste it. But if you bump some on his nose, they'll have to lick it off. And then they figured out that they love ice cream. I don't give them a lot, but they do like it. So anyway, that's hilarious that Jake Richards is on the same mind track as me. A glob of bacon grease, butter, or ice cream that's smudged on a cat's nose or cheek for them to wash it off. They'd get the cat to wash its face at least 3 times that day, and it said rain would come 3 times. And the rain said it would come 3 days after. So, after the cat's done washing his face. If you've tended a garden, you understand the pain and frustration felt when pests invade. Because you put so much time and energy into it, you know. It's really hard. For this, my Nana would mix up some soapy water and spray around the base of the plant. She would then sprinkle a mixture of cinnamon, tobacco, cornstarch around her flowers. The tobacco also deters rabbits and deer. Tobacco deters rabbits and deer. You guys, Book of Shadows that. To help flowers grow, she'd pour the blood from meat into the soil. She'd pour the blood from meat. Right, so if you had a big pack of steak from the store and there's a bunch of blood at the bottom, you can also purchase at the like Asian markets and different places pig's blood, cow's blood, all that, chicken's blood. I save chicken's blood from the pack to do workings with. I do the workings right away. I don't save it on my shelf. I do have meat bloods in the freezer from animals, but they're not after the meat's been cut. It's like at the butcher, you know. And a lot of those I use intuitively, or I get my like spirit animal books out, figure out what animals represent, and then use the blood in that way. It's not how these books are going to tell you how to do it, but it's just your own way. And it, like a lot of people will say, it's like what works for you or whatever. Just like make it your own. You don't have to know exactly what it's for and what people have used it for 1,000 years. You can do it your own way. However, I feel like if you do it the way that people have been doing it for thousands of years, or hundreds, so much energy has already gone in that direction, and it's like the path has already been made. So that's how I kind of imagine it and feel about it, that this path is already in the universe. So if you're doing that same ritual, it's almost like there's this invisible highway out there that is ready to carry you. You don't have to make a trail with a machete, if that makes sense. So next we're talking about if you've ever tended a garden, you understand, right, the pain and frustrations felt when pests invade. For this, my Nana would mix up some soapy water and spray it around the base of the plant. She would tend them and sprinkle a mixture. We already did that. My great-grandfather John would also spread manure in the fields. Oh, hold on. We were talking about the blood. To help flowers grow, she'd pour the blood from meat into the soil, right at the root of the plant. She'd also take leftover scraps of meat, such as the tough cartilage, and bury that at the root as well. My great-grandfather John would spread manure in the fields when the horns of the moon pointed downward, usually apparent when the new moon shows over the horizon. This ensured the manure would settle in the soil and enrich it. If this was done when the horns pointed up, the manure would remain at the top all year. Many folks till the fields during the winter for a good crop. Jonesboro, Limestone, and Telford are filled with tobacco and cornfields, with a couple of tomato farms here and there as well. Driving by, you can always see dark, freshly tilled soil until right around February. So the next section is called To Sow is to Reap. Remember, sow, S-O-W, is planting seeds. To sow is to reap. When harvesting, we gather the plants and the fruits in a basket that is lined with a fabric, especially if the plants will be used for medicine. Every time I go to harvest a plant for medicine or for work, I face the east. So maybe on your little harvesting basket, you could have a compass right attached to the basket. If that's not just in this folk magic stuff talking about the Bible and whatnot, talking about east, but almost all religions around the world agree that facing east is a very spiritual direction. Just so you know, it's not just the Christian Bible. But so you have your little basket and your cloth in your basket, you could make like a little clip-on compass, or you could super glue the compass to the basket handle, and that way you'd know. And if I was going to do it, I'd do it right at the top of the handle rather than the side, because when you hold a compass, you hold it like this. So maybe you just hold your basket from the side. But yeah, have a compass on your basket. What a great idea, eh? Every time I go to harvest a plant for medicine work, I face the east. At the fourth plant, I find and say a prayer telling God what it will be used for. When I harvest my stuff, or when I forage, I usually tell the plant before I ask, I want to use you for this. Is this okay? And then you listen, and then you wait for an answer. Ooh, a compass necklace. That's a great idea as well. I like that. Oh, we need to make a witchcraft utility belt, you guys. I'm writing that down. Witchcraft utility belt. That has just all kinds of stuff for foraging, like compass, and I could make it out of thrift store belts, and we could just make things to attach to it. Utility belts, like stones that would help you, compass, your atame, your scissors, all kinds of stuff on a utility belt. That sounds like it would be a really good idea. A foraging belt. Okay, back to the book. So, at the fourth plant, you say a prayer telling God what it'll be used for, asking for a blessing for the endeavor at hand. And then I hold the plant with my left hand and cut it with my right, always receiving with my non-dominant hand. Same when taking a whole plant up or getting the roots. My spirits also advise me to pay attention to things when I go to harvest from the wild or from the garden, such as the activities of animals, the direction of the wind, the condition of the plant that I come upon. Doves, cardinals, and swallows are good signs, being associated with superstitions of good luck. Are crows, owls, vultures, and whip poor wills are bad signs. What is a whip poor will, you guys? Whip poor will. They're bad signs, and more frequently feared for these associations with death, accidents, and illness. It's a bird. Okay, thank you. I love my Danes. I appreciate it. Where are we at? Whip will. Pay close attention to the growth of the plant itself when harvesting, especially when digging up roots. When I pull up roots and bulbs, if the roots are knotted or rotting, it's a sign that the work will be ineffective. Okay, that needs to be written in the Book of Shadows. When I pull up roots and bulbs, if the roots are knotted or rotting, it's a sign that the working will be ineffective. If the roots are smooth and healthy, it will work. That's important stuff, y'all. Let's get the highlighter out. Some plants, such as morning glories, have gnarly roots, so the opposite is true for them. Okay, so the ones that are supposed to have gnarly roots, if they're like not gnarly, then they won't be effective. And slim, straight roots are bad. The formula will usually specify which parts of the plants are needed, but sometimes the entire plant is required. In this case, the plant is pulled up and a piece of bread, a bead, or some cornbread or tobacco is dropped into the hole as an offering. Okay, great. And the thing is, you guys, when you take the whole entire plant, you better be giving some sort of offering. And to take a root, even if it's one part of the root, can kill a plant. So you need to ask, you need to listen. And if the plant says no, move on. There will be another one. And if the plant says no, I think it's because it's just not the right one for the working, if you get that no vibe. But listen to me. Absolutely. Place something in there. Taking roots is the last life of the plant. It won't come back next year. It's done forever once you take the rootage and the whole plant. The only chance it has left is taking the seed, and that's if the plant had already gone to seed, So if, for instance, there was a seed there, I would try to honor the spirit of that plant and replant a seed or something like that. But anyway, the plant's roots show a bad outcome. Simply replant it and water it, if they do. If you are taking leaves, flowers, fruit, or bark, pay attention to the toughness of the plant. Sometimes the spirits will redirect you. You can tell this is happening when your plant refuses to give up anymore. You start harvesting leaves easily, but then it becomes tougher. When this happens, it's time to stop. You have what you need. Scientifically, this occurs in many species of plants as a defense mechanism against being harvested or overeaten by animals to death. Wow. That's really cool. I think that's amazing. Scientifically, this occurs in many species of plants as a defense mechanism of being overeaten or harvested to death. An An easy harvest is a good sign, but a struggle at the start is a bad sign for the work and a message to reevaluate the situation. I also believe it means that you might not yet know everything you need for the work. And that's kind of what I'm saying. Like, maybe this plant you're not ready for, and that's not a bitchy thing to say. Like, not everybody can hold mandrake root and feel that that they know enough to use it. And whenever somebody asks to buy my mandrake root, I actually ask William. I actually ask the plant itself. So I don't have a listing of mandrake root that you can just buy on my Etsy, which is in the description below, because I have to ask the plant. You know, is this for them? Are they ready for it? Because I truly believe that working with that, if you're not ready for it, it's just like things could go wrong, things could be too strong, things could, you know. Anyway, there's my little bit interjected into there. When wildcrafting, most folk hold true to the Cherokee practice of passing the first 4 to 7 plants that you find. So if you're looking for thistle and you find a bunch of thistle, pass up the first 4 to 7 and get the 8th and beyond. I like that too. In order to leave plenty for future generations, and that's why that's done. After harvesting only what you need, or what the spirits limit you to, give an offering of cornmeal or tobacco. These are the tithes we give to the spirits in return for their favor. Okay, so cornmeal and tobacco. Put that in the Book of Shadows for this. Place your harvested portions on your handkerchief or in your basket, and don't let it touch the ground. If all other signs up to now are pointing to a good outcome, I sometimes rely on the last method simply for good measure. I will take a bundle of straw, plantain leaves, or tobacco leaves down the river. This bundle is not tied together with anything. I find a crook in the creek that what is a crook in the creek, you guys? I don't know. Find a crook in the creek that faces east and hold up the bundle with prayers. What is a crook in the creek? A bend. Okay, thank you. I then drop the bundle into the water and watch it. If it separates within 3 feet as it floats, it foretells failure. Oh, you guys, I love this. I love this. So if it separates within 3 feet, it will foretell failure. If it remains in a loose bundle for 9 feet or more as it drifts away, it shows the working or medicine will be a success. That's amazing. These signs and omens are simply the tip of the iceberg of divinatory practices in Appalachia. See, I want to know all the divinatory practices in Appalachia for sure. And only a few that I use in my roots. I use working my roots. I find it customary to always consult a few different methods or signs and look for consistency in the outcome to better understand the direction the spirit points you toward. Now the next section is called Root and Weather Signs. See how good this book is? Like, there's just a plethora of amazing usable information. No matter where we are in the world, I believe most of us can find a creek or something near or next to our house, right? A creek, a stream, a river, something like that. I know, Mama Hennessy, Jamikai says, I need that dang book. This book, you guys, Jake Richards, Backwoods Witchcraft. Right now we're reading chapter 5. Reading the whole thing in order. Kind of as an audiobook with a little commentary. You know, not that I'm somebody who's like, oh, great, Taxidermy Witch is doing commentary, but that's kind of what this is. Batman's Ghost, hey, nice to see ya. So the next section is called Root and Weather Sign. Here we go. Besides the care taken in planting and harvesting crops, plants were watched for omens. If cabbage grows primarily white leaves, there will be a death soon before it's harvested. be a death soon before it's harvested. If flowers bloom inside of their season, it is also a sign of death. Now remember, hundreds of years ago, people didn't live to be super old, and people had, you know what I'm saying, there, like, death was common. So I don't know how right this would be today with, like, modern medicine. And I just want to interject that, like, I don't want to know the people. It sounds like people are going to die so often. Well, back in these days they did. I just wanted to say. Madam Butterfly, I'm sorry. It's no good. I'll be thinking water for you. Alright, if cabbage grows primarily white leaves, right, we said that. This has always held true for my family. Before my step-grandfather John passed away last winter, the mums outside were blooming out of season in the summer. Before my Aunt Marie passed away a few years ago, the irises bloomed through a Christmas blizzard. That makes me want to cry. That's so beautiful that the spirit of those people kind of showed up in flowers. Oh, wow. Wow. Some taboos remain in planting certain plants or trees either on the property or at all. For instance, you're never supposed to plant a willow or a walnut tree yourself. Okay? You're BOS, you're never supposed to plant a willow or a walnut tree yourself. Otherwise, you'll die otherwise you'll die either when it first blooms or when it's big enough to shade your grave. What? We predict the weather by the aches and pains in our body, by the way the wind blows, by using a jar of animal fat. Aching in the shoulders and arms means it's going to rain a bit, but if an aching is in the back or legs, there will be a downpour where it's really muddy. There's been many a time that I didn't heed Mama's warnings about the mud, and my foot would get stuck every time. My shoe was pulled plumb off, and it just sat there filling with muddy water. Do you guys want to hear a story time after this about getting stuck in the mud? If you do, all you have to do is remind me after I'm done reading this chapter, because I won't remember. But I have a hilarious story time, and we've only got a page and a half left. I have a hilarious story time about getting stuck in the mud, so all you guys have to do is remind me. Don't let me turn off the camera without telling that story. Alright, so off we go. Animal fat or oil shut tight in a jar was left in the window to predict the weather. I'm going to do that. I have a big tub of animal fat. Let me show it to you what I use for my, like, witch's ointments. Where's my ointment? Got it. Where my ointment is. So this is really killer. I just want to show this to you guys, because we're talking about animal fats and that. So you can actually get this at the store. It is snow-capped lard. It's hog's lard. And this is 4 pounds. It's a 4-pound tub. Now, some people say, could I just use bacon fat? I say no, and the reason is because that is smoked and like cooked and all of that. This is straight up just hog's lard, like, that's not, had any real processing to it besides getting it separated. So it's very thick, and it makes for a great witch's ointment. But you guys, it smells like turkey soup. There's nothing you can do. You can add as much powdered frankincense, dragon's blood, everything that you want. It's still going to smell like turkey soup. Which in turn means that if you make like a witch's ointment or any kind of ointment out of it that may have herbs and your animals want to lick it off, the herbs could potentially be harmful to the animal. I was going to make Be Young a witch's ointment, I have witches' ointments on my Etsy for anything you want. If you want it for pain, if you want it for happiness, if you want it for exorcism, if you want it for anything, I can make you a witch's ointment. And what I do is I cook them in my glass visions where all that. And then this is what I use to strain the herbs. It's an old, like, bacon fat strainer so that you'd put this in and the bacon fat chunks would collect and then the fat would be at the bottom. Well, I use this to strain my herbs. So when I cook my witch's ointments and the fat and everything, I pour it into here and this catches the herbs. So it's really cool. So glad I found this while I was thrifting one day. But, 4 pounds is a lot of hog's lard. Good news is you can just keep it on the shelf. Otherwise, they also have these 1 pound blocks. It's just like a 1 pound block. But it's so cheap. I think this cost me like $7. And then the 1 pound block was like $1 or $2. So yeah, because once I got this book, there's so many new things that, like, information and new things that I have that I want to try, so. But, the best thing to do would be to, like, go to a local farm and ask them if they have hog's lard that you could use, because, for instance, like, this sits in plastic. Most of my things only sit in glass. I could transfer it, but I haven't, Anyway, that's hog's lard, and that's, how and where you can get it. Or you could just go on Amazon and search, see if they have this morel snowcap hog's lard. See how big it is? It's huge. Alright, let's keep reading. Find my place. Animal fat or oil shut tight in a jar was left in the window to predict the weather. Often this was duck or bear fat. Duck fat would be easy to get because if you get a duck breast, there's a lot of fat on that. So duck fat or bear fat it worked better than deer, rabbit, or goose fat. The fat seems to separate in the jar and create layers that are clear, misty, or snowy. If the thickness settles to the very bottom and there's no movement, it foretells nice weather. Great for the Book of Shadows, you guys. If it becomes cloudy and the thickness leans a certain way in the jar, it predicts a storm coming from the direction it's leaning. The activities of animals, and that's why if you had your witchcraft utility belt, you'd have your compass on you and you could just carry that around. Like back in the Victorian area, housewives, they carried these utility belts. They had matches on them. They had a place to strike them. They had like all these things that they would just need in their house walking around. Seriously. And I've always wanted one of those Victorian utility belts, but instead I'm just going to make my own kind of like spiritual crafting belt. Very excited about it. So where are we at? And a compass would be great just to see that, to tell what direction that the cloudiness was leaning. The activities of animals, wild and domestic, were also omens. If a black dog howls at night, the devil is near. If a white dog comes to home or follows you home and waits outside, they are waiting for their owner, death, to visit the home. That's insane! And holy potatoes, I have to tell you a story right now. There was this white dog named Kuma, and Kuma means bear in Japanese. And my neighbor to Peggy's house, they were Japanese and American family, and they named their dog Kuma. It was gigantic, like a gigantic Japanese puffy dog. Like, it was so humongous. I believe it was a Japanese dog. That's another story time, you guys. You have to ask me after this book's read. We're almost done. For the story time about Kuma and the Kuma's owner. Do you guys remember? Please, one of the mods, tell me to do those 2 story times. I can't even remember what the first one is. So Kuma, when I used to walk home from school, when my grandma was coming over to visit, like a year before she died, Kuma when I walked home, would always be sitting at my front door. And I couldn't get in the house because she was a dog that would bite you. So I would like go to my friend's house if I walked home from school and saw that Kuma was standing in front of the door, a giant white dog named Bear. I would just go to my friend's house and then call my house and be like, sorry, I couldn't come in because blah, blah, blah. So Michelle Knoll Creations, make sure that I tell the mud story and the Kuma story. Thanks, Kirsten. Yeah, you guys are on it. So a year or two later, my grandma passed away. Isn't that crazy that Kuma was there kind of as this omen saying like, death will be coming, and then my grandma passed? All right, so I'm excited for the story times after this, to be honest. So here we are. If a white dog comes to the home or follows you home and waits outside, they are waiting for their owner, Death, to visit the home. If a dog crawls, and my grandma was inside the house, that's what I'm saying. If a dog crawls on its belly while dragging its hind legs, Papa, oh, that means it has worms, but okay. Papa always said it was measuring its owner's grave. The same was found if you found an inchworm on yourself. There you go. Especially expect the worm is measuring you for the death shroud. Ah! Okay, the next and final section is called Your Garden. Okay, Your Garden. Whether you have a little space outside your home or acres to go with, I encourage you to grow your own food and flowers. Don't forget about flowers, you know. They're so cool. Shit, Heather. See you again. I think it's death was more common back here. Don't worry, Heather. I'll light a candle for the inchworm thing. Research indigenous herbs and grow them yourself, or grow the common sage, vervain, corn, and other crops. If you're going to do a container garden, always make sure the adult plants have enough room to grow deep roots. Otherwise, they can and will grow roots through the drain holes and into the ground. Plants are amazing. They can break concrete. They strive to survive. Strive to survive! This can be a problem with invasive plants, but most others I simply leave like this as they've technically made themselves at home. If your garden will be planted in the ground, well, it's like a goldfish in a bowl. If you don't have a big enough pot, the tree won't grow big because the roots can't, you know what I'm saying? So if you don't put it in the earth, it stunts its growth. If you put a goldfish in a pond like my mom does, they grow into giant like koi-like things. So the more space that you give it, the more space it'll have. That's absolutely true. It's true with humans as well. I don't know. I'm kidding. I'm not a doctor. I don't know if it's true with humans. This can be a problem with invasive plants, but most others I simply leave like we said. If your garden will be planted in the ground, find good soil. Clay is very hard for most plants to grow in, so you want nice brown dirt. Till the soil and make your rows. We always run the rows from east to west, following the path of the sun for better growth. For some plants like okra, I love okra. I love okra because it's like natto. It's really sticky. I actually love okra and natto as well. Natto is fermented soybeans. It's a Japanese thing, so good. Plants like okra, green beans, morning glories, I recommend using tobacco sticks or metal fence posts if you can find them, and drive them deep for good support. Tobacco sticks or thick sticks from the woods can be arranged teepee style, so where you put like 3 in a triangle and tie them together at the top. Teepee style with bottoms driven into the ground and the tops bound together with baling twine or hemp. I use hemp to give these plants something to climb on, because hemp helps induce visions. So hemp's nice. So for climbing plants like morning glories, wisteria, roses, use trellis or stake. Wisteria becomes woody and very heavy over the years, so it'll need a very strong support that will need to be permanent. You'll sometimes need to tie the stalks of the plant to the pole or cage, in which case you should avoid using wire, twine, or other tight strings because this can harm the plant as the stem grows thicker and sways in the wind. Otherwise, you may find your plants decapitated after a big storm. Instead, use strips of old towels or cloth to bind them. I prefer towel strips because the older and more worn they get while outside, the tougher and the knot will become, while also allowing the stalk room to grow. But I still go out and loosen the knot once in a while to make more room. Don't forget our planting song when planting new seeds and making their beds. Some for the birds and some for I, some for the beetle and some for the fly, some to rot and some to grow. Lord bless these seeds, I now do sow. Here in Appalachia, we plant our seeds on February 14th. Oh. Plant yours on a date that you're sure the frost won't kill them. The folklore of other religions may attribute a different date. This is to swear by if it's done right. It's always best to plant on the even-numbered days of the month, such as the 4th, 6th, 8th, and so on, but not the 1st, 3rd, 5th, or 7th. Last page of the book, of the chapter. However, no matter the number of the day, I never plant anything on a Friday, as I was always told it was bad luck. See, it's hard to remember all of these things together. You know, the moon, the day of the week, the color of your underwear. I mean, it sounds like it's just a lot to remember, but if we create songs, maybe we won't remember everything. Color of underwear wasn't in here. I was just teasing, but, you know. The only Friday that is exempt from this prophecy is Good Friday, when the seeds are nourished by the blood of Christ, ensuring a good yield. If your plants can't be sowed this early in the spring, you can at least make up the garden beds on Good Friday and they'll do just as well. Or you can just spend time out there and meditate on whatever day sounds amazingly special to you. No one laughed at my underwear comment, huh? Are you guys made of stone? Alright. So, you can at least make up the good, yeah. You'll see throughout this work that religious days such as Easter, Ash Wednesday, Good Friday have a lot of folklore and magic around them. I set out some buckets to collect rainwater as well. Heck yeah. I let them get full and water my plants when it's been hot or if it's been about a week since it rained. That's cool that he's using rainwater instead of regular water, because the rain comes from the sky and well water comes from the earth. And I just feel like using that rainwater rather than the well water is pretty magical and pretty good idea. Because it's probably what plants really do need. I wish there wasn't chemtrails, but yeah. I set out some buckets to collect rainwater. Give them the plants. If the leaves of the plant begin turning yellow or white, pluck them off. Yeah. This can be an onset of an illness in the plant or a lack of water or too much of it, among other things. This also lets the plant invest just enough energy to heal the place you plucked from, compared to a lot of energy spent trying to repair and keep that place alive. That's absolutely right. Plucking off leaves, and then you can use those kind of partially withered up leaves that you have to pluck for your workings. Why not just cut off the little bit that was starting to wither and use the rest? That's what I do. I try not to waste anything, you know. This also lets the plant, turn the last paragraph here, guys. Turn the soil good in your pots every spring before planting. Turn it up so the soil that was at the bottom is primarily at the top of the new year. This will move the majority of the nutrients back to the top. Cover this with new topsoil or manure. Get your spade and tobacco sticks and try your eye at watching the signs for the best growth of your herbs and roots. Okay, so the next chapter is chapter 6, and it's called Folk Rites of the Mountaineer, Techniques and Methods of the Power Doctor. The Power Doctor. I love, 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 love that phrasage. Power Doctor. And now we're going to tell 2 story times, isn't that right? Okay. story times. Ready? I have a curtain for story times. Because I wanted to do loads of story times, but then I just kind of stopped. And I wrote out like a bunch of old funny stories from my childhood, from my family, from everything. And I've got the list, but yeah, I just kind of stopped. But I love old stories. They're hilarious. Okay. Now I have to move y'all over here. Everything's falling. There we go. There. What, do you have to come closer to make it go away? There we go. There's Storytime curtain. Yay! Alright. Bye, Ricky. Love you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for your Patreon. I'm so appreciative, and everybody here at the channel is so appreciative of everybody that is contributing. Yay! Storytime. Okay, this first story time that we said we were going to tell, because we were just reading this book, Backwoods Witchcraft. I was talking about foretelling if there was going to be mud or rain. Does anybody remember how to foretell if there's mud or rain? We just read it. Okay, so basically, here we go. There are a lot of stories in my life that start out like this. So, I was out foraging with witchcraft materials in the woods with my daughter. So, I was out foraging witchcraft materials in the woods with my daughter. But we weren't in the woods. We were down at the, this, inlet bay type thing near where I grew up. And I just wanted to show her, where I used to, jump off the bridge into the water and where we used to swim and all this stuff. And then I was going down there because I wanted to harvest dead flowers. I love, love, love dead flowers from the beach. I actually have some that I can show you from that day. So I love making dead flower bouquet bundles. And down at our beaches, we just have these just kind of flowers that have died. And it makes sense because they're right by the salt water. So at some point, I think the salt contributes to them just dying. So my daughter and I are walking around, and there's there's all these little streams that build themselves in the tide, when the tide goes in and out. So one of these streams is kind of like a river that flows from the bay to the other side, where there's all these little mud pit type things. And over there, there's also sand dollars and starfish and all the kinds of things that if you were foraging sea things, you would want to look for. So I'm walking with her, and I'm with the flowers, and she's not 10 feet away from me, and she's so close to this, it's hard, but it's also made of mud, but it's an edge that right below it is this rushing water. So I'm like, Lily, yes, happy 11/11, everyone. So I say, Lily, please, please, please stop walking so close to the edge. You're going to get stuck in the mud. And it was totally my fault. I kept telling her, you're going to get stuck in the mud. You're going to get, and of course it happened. That's how law of attraction works. I drew that energy toward me, and I know that. So, oh, and I'd like to tell you this. I'm wearing a pair of hunter boots that are the ones I used when I work with the goats, so the ones I don't really care about. And she didn't have anything to wear, so she's wearing my white Balboa hunter boots, and they were awesome. You know, hunter boots? They're cool anyway or whatever. These ones were made, and it looked like white, shiny pearl snakeskin on the whole boot. And I found them brand new for $100, and brand new, really, they cost $400. So I would never spend that much money on something like that, but I actually did need rubber boots. So I went and I got the best, the British hunter boots. Okay, so I have these wicked ones. I wear them with dresses. I just love them. She wears them. She gets frickin' stuck in the mud. I turn around and she's like, Mom! And so she's like, you know how hunter boots go up to, the tall ones go up to here? She's like stuck to here in the mud, in the boot. And I'm like, oh my God! So the problem is that she weighs way less than me. She weighs like, I don't know, 60 pounds, 70 pounds. And I weigh 120 at this point or something. So I cannot come save her. She's stuck in the mud, and she's stuck up to her knees, and then she's like kind of slowly sinking. I'm not thinking about my boots. I don't care about my boots. But the point of the story is, yes, my boots are somewhere in the bay. These really awesome hunter boots. And I'm just so sad that they're there. I hope somebody finds them someday and uses them. But there's no way for me to get to her. So I like find a stick. And I'm like, Lily, grab this stick, you know. And she can't grab it and I can't pull her. So I throw her the stick and I'm like, pry yourself out. And, you know, nothing is working. And she's crying and I'm crying and I'm scared for her. I'm like, what the fuck are we gonna do, you know? So anyway, I think finally I had given her like 3 different sticks. I'd thrown them to her because I can't pull her out, because if I go out there and I weigh more, I'll sink lower than she is and we both be stuck. And I think that was the first time in her life she like really panicked and really thought like, oh my God, I'm like really stuck. So that was quite a day. I did end up getting a big bouquet of wildflowers, but that's like law of attraction, you guys. I told her over and over, you're too close. You're going to sink in the mud. And I must have said that to her 15 times. Turned my back for 2 seconds. Mom! And then it had happened. Yeah, the earth reclaimed my hunter boots. That's right. So yeah, it was just a moment that we had together. I'm really glad that we had it because we got through it with nobody else. But it was scary, you know? I couldn't have left her to go get help. It was just nuts. So, next story. What is the next? Oh, Kuma, the white dog, right. Alright, so if there are any children that are listening, I recommend they probably don't listen to this story. Well, yeah, if you're under 16, like this could really be traumatic. It could be very traumatic for any pet owner. So I'm just going to say that. This story involves the owner of the dog, who is a very severe alcoholic and still is. And that'll be the new neighbor that I avoid, because it's the old neighbor I avoid. But anyway, he is my mom's next door neighbor. I, of course, cannot say his name, but I can tell you that another story about him, after I tell the Kuma story, you guys have me tell the motorcycle story. The motorcycle story of him. And it will give you a better idea of who this character is, you know. So, alright. My dad tells us this story. I wasn't home. So this is the story that my dad tells. And this happened probably, please, if you are tender-hearted to pets or anything like that, you don't want to hear this story, because it's a story that, you know, so yeah. Alright, so Dad says, the neighbor, we'll just call him the neighbor, I hope I don't slip on the name. The neighbor calls him over and says, come over here quick. So my dad's like, okay. Goes over there. And it's the middle of a day in the week, you know, just like random. So he goes over there and he goes, oh, no. That's not right. First thing that happens is my dad's just outside doing yard work, and all of a sudden he hears a gunshot, like a shotgun. Boom! my dad goes over to the fence, and the neighbor was like, please come over and help me with something. I need your help before my kids get home. Okay, so obviously you guys kind of know what happened. But what you don't know, and I'll continue the Kuma story, but what you don't know is a little pre-story. Okay. This dog, this white dog, Kuma, who's huge, would, and where Kuma's, like, cage was right next to my parents' bedroom window. And this dog would bark all day long. All day long. And here's how the bark would go. Woo! 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 Like, constant, all day. And especially during the night. And my parents were just like so frustrated. So my dad told the neighbor, he's like, your dog, for the last year or so since you got it, has seriously been keeping my wife awake. And we can't fucking sleep. And then he said nothing. And then 2 days later, my dad hears a gunshot. And what the guy had done was gotten plastered and thought about what my dad had said. Because he goes, well, what do you want me to do about it? My dad goes, I don't know, shoot it. My dad was completely kidding. I'm sure in between there he said something else like, you know, train it, take it to a doctor, I don't know, blah, blah, blah. So my dad, of course, feels horrible that he even planted that seed, but he was completely joking, I have to say. So my dad has to help him bury the dog before his children get home from school in half of an hour. And I mean, that's the story of Kuma and this crazy neighbor who actually still lives next door. But it's fine. So now on to one more story about this neighbor. It is so freaking sad. My dad felt like utter shit for so long. My dad felt so bad. Because, like, men joke like that, you know, I guess. Or people joke like that. And in no way at all. Because my dad gave him, like, a bunch of other ideas and then said, I don't know, shoot it. Like, so my dad did feel really bad. And of course, you know, like, the kids got a new dog and all of that stuff. But listen to this story. And I could tell this story because it was in the newspaper about this man. Okay. So this man is an alcoholic and has been since we met him. And he has this lovely wife from Japan that he met in the newspaper and married her from the newspaper. And he makes that a point to tell people about that. And they have 2 children together. And the kids call him Uncle, which to me is kind of funny. But I don't know, it's not my family. They're allowed to do whatever they want. So, whenever he, like, because sometimes he'll just be, like, a hermit and drink at home, or sometimes he'll go out to the bars. Well, the bars around here, because, you know, it's, like, smaller, are pretty packed. And he would go and, like, he'd want to sit at the bar area, and there wouldn't be enough seats, like, on a Friday night, because it was busy. I draw weird people around me. I have no idea why. But you're right. I do have the weirdest neighbors. That's why I need a commune. Like a 14 acres. And for my house to be right in the middle. No neighbors. So, I've had other weird neighbors too now that I think about it. But anyway, this man. So there's no stools at the bar on a Friday or Saturday night. So you know what he does? He ties with rope a bar stool on the back of his motorcycle and drives to the bar. Like, how smart is that? Why don't you paint a sign on the back of your bike that says, I'm wasted? Like, a stool. You know, a stool with legs, like 4-leg stool and a seat. He tied that with rope to the back of his motorcycle and drove half an hour into town, like the bigger town, to the bar. Now, the reason that this was in the newspaper, y'all, and I think Peggy still has the article, is because one of the nights that he had done this, he was going 100 miles an hour on the way home in a part of, that's when he was pulled over, and it was in an area that's like 35 miles an hour because it's swervy, and he was going 100 miles an hour on his motorcycle, and when the officers found him, his pants were already completely soaked with urine. So I think on the way home he probably had to go to the bathroom and was just like, fudge it, I'll be there in a minute, and just or he had a giantly full bladder and decided, maybe if I piss myself, the cops won't want me in their car. I don't know, but he was in jail for a few days, and I felt so bad because his wife didn't know what to do, and she's always asked my folks for help and stuff like that, and they just have no idea what to say. But yeah, man, traveling bar stool, just rope it to the back of your motorcycle and drive to the bar. There's no reason why a cop would pull you over. I mean, why would they do that? And I did a story time with this curtain like 6 months ago when I was doing a few story times. Go back and watch the Gina story. It's called something like My Neighbor Gina. And it's a weird neighbor story too. But it's about the other neighbor to my parents who they moved away a long time ago. But this lady would garden and go outside in like lingerie, and the story is hilarious. I'm not going to ruin the story, but go watch my story time called Gina. Search Taxidermy Witch Gina. It'll come up. Yeah. So if you guys want me to get into more story times, make sure to put them in the comments below. I've got so many stories. I've got a story about a time, and this is a story time I'll do. I just have to really make sure not to say the name of my friend because I don't know how to get a hold of her. But like one time when we were 14 years old, we decided to call the pizza boy and answer the door in assless chaps. So anyway, we've got so many stories to tell. And that's the thing on this channel, like it's primarily a witchcraft channel where we read books and we talk about herbs and we, forage, we do things like that. But in general, it's a time for me to spend time with you guys and talk about my life and things that I've seen and been through and things that I think are hilarious. So, be sure to, in the comment section after this video is over, make sure to ask for more story times, because I'll break out those old stories and we'll start getting in some story times, because I love this curtain and I like being in front of it, because there's just so much back there that's like distracting and I feel very cluttery with all that behind me. So I do like to get in front of my story time curtain from time to time. You guys, thank you so much for joining. If you need anything from dead flowers from the beach to any herb that you can think of to some things from my dehydrator, mystery boxes, packages of tarot readings that are live on Skype, all of that's in my Etsy shop down below. If you don't find something that you want there, all you have to do is message me and we create something together. Something absolutely brilliant and fantastic that nobody else has. And then the Patreon's there if you want to donate to the channel, if you're enjoying the reading, the audiobook style reading with the commentary, I suppose. I'm so thankful to everybody that's helping the family survive. This is money so that we can light candles and keep the lights on in the studio and, things like that. Do our workings and be here together. So I appreciate you all. Thank you for joining me, and I'm absolutely positive I'll be back for another video today. I just need to rest my voice. I don't think we'll be reading another chapter from the book because the next chapter is quite long. The Folk Rites of the Mountaineer. We read from this a little bit, I know, because there's a little section that I couldn't stop giggling in called Pegging. Remember, Thomas, when I couldn't... Pegging, Plugging, and Nailing Rites. And that's when we brought up the Scary Stories book, because we were talking about the working that they did in the Scary Stories book with the nail and the willow tree and all that, and asking to borrow sugar and saying no. Alright, you guys. Love you so much. Make sure in the comments to say if you want more story time. Make sure to check out the Etsy page and read through the Patreon. I'll see you guys soon. Have a brilliant day. Bye.